Thanks for joining us, Kal. It's really good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Amy. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think there's lots to find out from your business name and what you're building. So first of all, can you let the listeners know who you are and the organisation that you lead, please?
So I'm Kal, and I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Sakaya. Sakaya is a technology outsourcing company that's based here in the UK, and we have delivery teams that work with our clients out of Egypt.
And I was reading, as a result of research for this podcast, I was reading a bit about Egypt and how it's, the GDP is great and it's becoming one of the world leaders on the stage of nearshore outsourcing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's becoming. It's getting there. I think it has all the criteria and everything you need really to become a global player in that space. Incredible talent pool. It's a relatively untapped market as we speak. So more and more clients and companies are looking towards Egypt for their outsourcing.
And tell us about the organisation itself then. So you said you're the co-founder and chief exec. Can you tell us a bit more about how you work and who you support, please?
So we've got I'd say probably our leadership team is all based in the UK, but they're really the core and the engine of the organization is based out of Egypt. So we work with clients. All our clients are based in the UK and Europe. We've got a few in the US, but they're mostly mainland Europe and the UK. We work with them to support them with all their technology objectives. So we provide them with dedicated teams out of our delivery centers in Egypt to act as an extension to their existing tech teams and engineering teams to help them deliver on their digital products and objectives. But we also take on projects where we take end-to-end ownership of delivery. So support them from strategy, identification of what needs to be delivered, into delivery and delivery oversight.
And what kind of challenges are your clients facing at the minute in terms of technology? Are there key themes that stand out right now?
Yeah, we have some of our clients are what I'd call analog organizations. So organizations that are generally operating in a manual fashion, spreadsheet driven, that need to start catching up with advancements in technologies and to build the foundations to set them up for even adopting things like AI in the future. So we do work with a lot of those clients to build them products and services that transform how they deliver their services to their clients. And then there's another category, I would say, which is more advanced or more mature in their technology journey, where they're, for example, really keen on embedding some of that new AI tech into their operations and see how they can leverage it. So that becomes more on the, let's explore with them how we can take on what's out there in the market. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, but embed it into their current services operations to deliver them value. And then I'd say the final category of clients that we work with personally is just they're looking their challenge is not a technological one per se, but it's finding the right technical talent. The market is very saturated right now, and it's like they call it a war for talent, and kind of that's what makes our business right now very, very appealing to a lot of them, because we are kind of opening up a new untapped market of exceptional talent that is available to support them.
Fantastic. And is it across all areas of technological expertise?
Yeah, I think mostly. So we cover as in Sakaya, we cover most areas of technology. We focus specifically on what I'd call consumer-facing tech. So it's really products and services that are delivered for a consumer or a business user. So we stay away from enterprise solutions and off-the-shelf systems, but we do focus really on custom build, giving clients kind of their own IP in terms of technology that they use to service their customers.
Brilliant. And in terms of your background then, tell us a bit about how you ended up here. So obviously I can see that you went to university in Cairo, electronics engineer by trade, and then developed from there into the sort of comms side of things. So can you tell us about your journey and how Sakaya got started and where the idea came from?
Yeah, it's a long journey that doesn't always make sense, but basically, yeah. So I'm an electronics engineer by trade. I started out in Cairo. I came to the UK a long time ago now, 20 years ago, to do my PhD. And then I decided I want to move into consulting. So I started a career in consulting. Had a few years at IBM, and then moved to Ernst & Young, where I started specializing in digital transformation programs and delivering products. So focus really on the product management and delivery side. And then moved to a number of other organizations where I started kind of leading and building teams around products and services. So I was head of product and service design, etc. And then started moving into tech delivery. So my last role pre-Sakaya was in a similar organization, really successful, that supported its clients by delivering tech and providing with the right engineering talent, mostly out of Eastern Europe and Ukraine. And then when the war in Ukraine happened, and even before that, to be honest, with inflation and salaries, and as I said, the war for talent in Europe, my personal opinion was the market is really looking for an alternative, an alternative that has any compromises in it. The European market really adopted the Eastern European talent pool, and they really like the fact that it's nearshore, and it's really high quality, and they've got great communication skills. So that's been the shift in tech delivery in the last 10, 15 years, where a lot of focus has been in Eastern Europe. But with all the changes, macroeconomic changes and the war in Eastern Europe recently, the market has been looking for an alternative, but they didn't want to compromise on the quality and the nearshore aspect. And that's kind of where we started out with Sakaya. So Sakaya really bridges that gap. It's untapped. Egypt is 100 million people. So we've got exceptional talent in there. And we come from one of those cultures where growing up, it's like you're always asked whether you want to be a doctor or an engineer. So the number of people studying technical degrees in engineering is really high. We have over 600,000 graduates a year in Egypt. Over 100,000 of them are from engineering degrees. So the tech talent is there. And all our universities, public universities and private universities, are taught in English. So you've got the right communication skills, the language, the talent, the availability of it. And because of a lot of the kind of the economic situation in Egypt, it's a very attractive price point for our European clients. So we founded Sakaya at the end of last year.
And so how are things? How was the transition from the roles that you were in the past to being a co-founder? Because that must have been a journey. Yeah,
it's been a journey, exciting one. Ups and downs, of course. There's a lot of terrifying moments, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I think obviously when you start moving from the first few months, it's very different. Especially when you come from corporates that are really big enterprises. So as I said, I've started at IBM and EY, and in those organizations, you're used to a huge support network. It's exceptional. Like you can tap into talent and expertise all over the world whenever you need. Like I think at EY, they taught us this concept of consult first. So you always have someone to consult with, get advice from. Moving into being a co-founder, I think that was the biggest shift for me. Obviously, it's a smaller team, but I was also very lucky that my business partners have done this before. So they're not first-time founders like myself. So they've gone through some of those experiences. I know I've learned on them a lot in the beginning, which was really, really helpful. So I didn't feel completely on my own. But obviously setting up the processes from the start, building brand equity, which I think was the biggest challenge. Again, when you're working in a big organization, it kind of sells itself in a way. Everyone knows about it. But going out to market with a new brand, no one's heard of, and also selling a new market, which is Egypt as a talent pool, which is not very common right now in the industry. It was a challenge. It was one that I think we navigated really well, and it's been fun so far.
And thinking about your leadership style, so the level of seniority that you worked at previously, clearly you've managed teams, clearly you've built teams, but in terms of the leadership style, how different do you see it as a co-founder, chief exec of that type of organisation versus your time at EY or the other organisations?
I mean, I wouldn't say they're very different, to be honest. I think at least personally, I really believe in the same principles. Where as a leader, I mean, I think there's a big difference, and I know it's sometimes a bit of a cliche, but a lot of people talk about it, which is there's a very big difference between being a leader and a manager. And they're two of completely different things, and you can be great at one and really not that good at the other, and that's fine. So I think that's a really important thing. I think a leader is accountable, right? A leader needs to take accountability and also protect their team. I think that's your number one objective here. I know people talk about being visionary, and you need that thing. Of course, you need to have all of that. But I think that the number one thing is you can't lead without respect. And I think the days of this superhuman who can do everything on their own are long gone. Right? You are as good as your team. And I've always said that I've always been very lucky. Everywhere I've been, where I've really had exceptional teams working with and for me. And that's kind of, I'd like to think why my career has gone where it's gone. It's because of that. And so it's one of the things I'm trying, hopefully, to do here at Sakaya, which is empower the right people, get the right people on board, and also be accountable for all decisions. It's the worst type of leader that always makes a decision that's like, it was really my call, I couldn't do much about it, etc., etc. I mean, if you make a call, you stand by it, even if it's the wrong one. But I think it builds trust, it builds respect with your teams. And that helps everything kind of going forward, because then you're all aligned on one vision and you're all fighting the same corner.
And thinking about your career then through leadership and management, but in terms of the being out front and leading a team, are there any sort of if I knew then what I know now moments that you could reflect back on? Are there any sort of bloopers, for want of a better phrase, that you've made during your leadership and management career that you could share with us? Because they're always good to learn from. Maybe not so good to share, but they're always good to learn from.
I mean, there's one definitely, which is, for me, it's always around, though, I think don't sell. Let me put it this way. I would say be completely upfront about what you're trying to achieve. I don't think that there are very few places or roles I've seen where they're only positive, right? There's always some challenges and there are always some negatives. I think getting teams on board, understanding what they're signing up for from the start, and that applies to me. I've seen it with leaders who've led me, where look, if I know what I'm signing up for, and I know what the challenges are in advance, and I know these are areas that we'll work on improving as an organization, but it's not perfect yet. There's no shame in that. No one's 100% perfect. And then, so I think that's been something that I would say is been a blooper, where you interview people and they ask you about something in the organization, and you're always trying to say it's the greatest place on earth. Sometimes it's amazing, but there are always negatives that you need to highlight, because the more you're transparent with your teams, again, as I said, it builds that trust and respect going forward. And I think that is a fundamental aspect. You don't want anyone working with you saying, I wish no, if you had told me.
It's true. It's so true. You need to give people warts and all, don't you? And then they're coming in with their eyes open and they can make an informed decision. Whether that's, I was just speaking to a sales leader, then it was a very similar conversation, but you're absolutely right in leadership as well, and hiring and so on and so on. It's that transparency builds trust, doesn't it?
And it's the teaming aspect of it, right? So again, because you just mentioned sales leaders, so that's brought a thought in my mind. You want everyone to be kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. You want everyone to be going in the same direction. And what you usually see is when, I think the trick is, how do you make reward collective, right? So how do you make it a team success rather than an individual success? Because sometimes that drives wrong behavior. I'm not saying it's always the case, but sometimes it becomes, you want healthy competition, but you don't want people fight. Like, you want everyone to be collectively winning together at the end of the day. So I think that's also a very big part of it.
Absolutely. It gets toxic otherwise, doesn't it? Sometimes if it's the converse of that. And thinking about the work that you do, what I'm really interested in as well is innovation. Technology is moving so quickly. And so for the audience of the podcast, which typically they're business leaders or business owners, and they're trying to keep pace with the changes in technology, they're trying to innovate, but obviously then there's that risk mitigation and risk management element. How can leaders walk that fine line? How do you continue innovating and move with the pace of technology, but mitigate the risk? Do you have a view on that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely, both are definitely not mutually exclusive, right? They're complementary aspects, and it's all about the one. For me, it's like the appetite for risk and where you are. Every organization is different. There's no one size fits all. So it's how do you balance it? It's like a balancing act, right? So you obviously want to drive innovation, but you want to drive it in a protected environment. You want to, it's like we deliver products, right? So when we do the product delivery, right, we talk about MVPs and we talk about like minimum viable products and how we test the market, how do we validate, and all of that really is to minimize risk. All of that is to optimize our clients' investments and their spend, etc. So it's the same with innovation. You need to cultivate the right environment for it. You need to protect it in its own, I wouldn't say silo, but it's a standalone piece of work where you validate it, you test it, you give people the right creative freedom to try new things and the right pilots to test them before really rolling it out to the wider organization. And again, it depends. If you're innovating with a space shuttle, you need to be way more careful with your risk management than if you're building a dating app. You know what I mean? It really is a balancing act there, and there's it's relative to who you are as a business.
And with regards to sort of those evolving trends, then what challenges are you seeing your clients trying to overcome? I know we mentioned the war for talent, and that's absolutely, it's been raging since 1997, hasn't it? Or since McKinsey coined it in 1997. But you mentioned the war on talent, but what else are your clients up against from a technology perspective? What challenges are you solving for them?
I think it's the I would call it their agility. I think what's going on in the tech world right now is I just say sum it up in one word: it's speed, right? It's the disruptors and the new startups and building new technology is very easy as we speak, right? I'm sure you've heard about. I mean, ChatGPT can write code, which is incredible, and you can really start getting things going very quickly. There are many businesses that can be launched very rapidly, and they are disrupting a lot of the, say, medium to large organizations because they don't have that internal agility and operational flexibility to catch up. So you're a bit at a disadvantage if you're well established in a weird way right now, because you don't have this nimbleness in your business operations. So a lot of our clients as well, we'll be working with them to kind of implement the right methodologies, get them up to speed with all those new processes, identify areas where they could be bottlenecks or innovation blockers, for lack of a better term, and making sure we set them upright for kind of the future. Because transformations it's a continuum. It's not a one-time thing. And a lot of organizations have done that mistake before, where they needed to catch up a few years ago and they've done a digital transformation program, and then it stopped, right? And then now they're kind of finding themselves in the same place again. So making sure that there's an understanding that it's a continuum and you need to continuously transform and improve yourself is I'd say is the biggest challenge for many companies right now.
And I imagine the challenge is that you've got to build that transformation so that it remains agile. This is maybe not the best analogy, but you don't want to go in there and build a skyscraper when you've got to move 6 blocks down in a few years' time or a few months' time.
Yeah, 100%. And it's to your point, it's a leadership problem usually, because if you can't get it's from top down, right? If you can't get the business leaders to adopt it, you can't have like an agile team working in silo where everything coming to them is in the kind of the old ways, and you'd be have like what you'd call like a 2-speed organization, which doesn't really work.
And do you find that there's an appetite for adopting that level of leadership with your clients, or are you sort of pushing on an open door with that mindset, or is there some resistance to that?
I mean, I think that some organizations you'd find resistance. I'm not saying it's everywhere, but there are definitely an element of resistance in that, because with that mindset, you need to. There's an interesting kind of analogy, which is there's something called a fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And I think that, I mean, they're all common sense components in there, but the number one thing in that growth mindset is being uncomfortable with the unknowns, and that doesn't come natural to everyone. You need to go through it, and you need to understand that you've got processes in place to make you comfortable with the unknowns, that the unknowns are not going to come kind of left field and really impact the business. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is how do you make people and business leaders who are accountable, because they are accountable at the end of the day, right? So that's the reason for their concerns. How do you make them comfortable with the process of not knowing stuff? So yeah, I would say that's where you find some of those challenges. And we usually see it's like you go through that process with them, and over time they start buying into it. It's not a straight kind of switch, but they do buy into it when they start seeing the outcomes.
And thinking about the evolving trends that are coming down the line, then what do leaders present need to worry about in the future? Is it? I know we spoke about the speed of change, but is there something that leaders could be doing now to get out in front of what's coming around the corner in terms of technology challenges?
I think not just leaders. I think everyone needs to have a solid understanding of what AI can and can do, and how they can start and how it can impact their industries. I think that is a really key thing. Leaders more important than anyone else. It's like, how do you, I'm not saying you have to adopt it or you have to embed it, but you need to have an understanding of what it does, because there's so much good that can come out of it, but there's also so much danger that can come out of it. I'm not saying in danger and like robots taking over the world and that stuff, but you can do so many wrong things, and many people can think they can do a job that is just because AI can support them, but you need to understand what good looks like, and you need to understand the constraints and limitations of this new tech, so you can maintain your business objectives, your quality standards, and everything that you stand for as an organization. So I think leaders more than anyone need to have that understanding and need to empower their teams to learn about it, but they also need to give them assurances that it's not detrimental to the jobs. So adopting AI is a good thing for everyone, if done correctly.
It's empowering, isn't it? If it's positioned correctly and it's used correctly, it's absolutely empowering and can make people more productive, rather than sort of the fear factor that some people are experiencing, that it's going to take all the jobs, which is not the case at all. And so thank you for sharing that. And so a question that I always like to ask the guests on the podcast is about what you're reading or consuming. So what shaped your leadership perspective? Is there a book or a podcast, documentary? Have you consumed something that's helped you on your leadership journey that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of, I'd say there's a couple of books or principles that have definitely shaped a lot of that in the last few years. I mean, my favorite, I have to say, is a book called Principles, Ray Dalio. Is really about the principles of leadership and team building and what a leader should stand for. And it is really, really, really incredible to read. And it's not a short read, but it's definitely worth it. And it talks a lot about stuff that is not given a lot of credit, right? There's a lot of stigmas, or there's a lot of myths about leadership, that you need to be this strong leader that is not vulnerable, doesn't share with the team, and you need to lead through an iron fist. And it really breaks some of those kind of concepts down and shows that there are better ways, or different ways. I'm not saying better, but there are different ways to do things. It's definitely changed a lot what I believed in, and it was recommended to me by someone who's mentored me for a long time. So, and it was definitely very useful.
Thank you for sharing that one. And what was the second one?
I mean, there's a book, but there's also a principle, which is the 80-20 principle.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Pareto.
Obviously, I mean, so the principle is known, but there is actually a book that's called the 80-20 principle, which is also useful. But yeah, I think that principle is really important in a lot of what we do.
I find it fascinating how that tracks across so many different things in terms of the 80-20. You see it everywhere if you look for it.
It's literally everywhere. But it's really important.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing those with us. And so what's going to be happening over the next 6, 9, 12 months? Can you tell us a little bit more about Sakaya and what you're going to be working on?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some really exciting clients that we work on with right now. Obviously, can't share too much about their names, but personally, I'm a huge football fan. So I am always kind of proud to say that we actually do our work with some well-known football clubs right now. Help them with their applications and products, which is really personally enjoyable. So it's getting my hand back into some of delivery just because I'm excited and interested. But we're also the other really exciting thing is as an Egyptian, we're really kind of proud of what we're doing in Egypt with the Egyptian talent we've got. So we've got over the next year, we're organizing a number of client visits to Egypt. So trying to take 1 or 2 of our clients, or even prospective clients, out to Cairo every month, kind of to meet the talent in person, to see the teams, to see the setup. Obviously, get them to go to the pyramids, inside the pyramids, if they're brave enough. And build that really. So we're growing. It's, as I said, it's been an exciting journey. I think the market's picking up now. It's been a tough market for the past 12-18 months, but we're showing that things are looking up.
Fantastic to hear that things are going so well, and I really appreciate you joining us and look forward to seeing what happens next.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to the Human CEO podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please help us share more leadership content by liking and subscribing. If today's episode got you thinking about unleashing the full potential of your organisation's culture, we've got a great next step for you. Take our free assessment at humanculture.scoreapp.com to see where your organisation stands and discover actionable insights to elevate your workplace culture.